bed, get up, get up, get out of bed, cheer up, the sun is red, live, love, laugh and be happy. What if I've been blue, now I'm walking through fields of flowers.
Hello and welcome to the Red Robin Podcast Weekly, which is of course powered by Budget Ties Auto Centre and 360 Chartered Accountants. And it's becoming a bit of a tired sin now, isn't it? But the life of a Hull Kingston Rovers supporter is never a dull one, as this past 6 days has shown us. We started the week off with a defeat to bottom side Toulouse, which was then quickly followed by the news that Tony Smith was to depart the club with immediate effect. Danny McGuire has stepped in as interim head coach and also signed a brand new 3-year contract. The following day, Brett Delaney was appointed as forwards coach with immediate effect, with his contract running to the end of next season. This was then followed also by the news that 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗁𝗍 Senior had signed for the Robins, also with immediate effect from Huddersfield Giants. And today, Frankie Halton has signed a brand new contract, which will keep him at 𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗄𝗏 Park until the end of 2025. And that is all without considering the fact we've got a derby at the end of the week, which is normally the biggest game in the calendar. So it is great to be welcoming Craig, Mikey and Graham, who's joining us for the very first time. Graham, before I introduce Craig and Mikey, just tell us how your love affair with the Robins kicked off.
Yeah, so I'm a child of watching Rovers in the 80s, the glory days. So I can remember that far back when my mum used to take me as a very young kid to stand at the old 𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗏𝗏 Park, right at the front on the railings. And that's where it all started. I used to go along with my pals when we were old enough to go out on our own. And those are the same kids I stand with now in the East Stand to this day, 30-something years later on.
Yeah, fantastic. And a story that's probably echoed by many Rovers supporters. I do get jealous, especially when I do the heritage casts, when I speak to players like Gary Clark and Dave Hall and, the greats about, what they achieved in the 80s and although we've had some tiny bits of success since then, it's been short-lived, hasn't it? So I do get very jealous sometimes of the people in that era and being able to watch the Robins then. Mikey, you've been a very busy man. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you very much. Keeping myself as busy as possible, which is one of these things where when you have a week like this, maybe you don't need to be busy. But yeah, it's I was on a training course on Monday, completely missed all of the Tony Smith stuff until about 3 o'clock. So when I got round to seeing it, there was so much to try and keep up with.
Yeah, and news travels fast, doesn't it? And Craig, we're going to go into the Toulouse game, but obviously it's been a bit of a whirlwind few days, hasn't it, for the Robins?
Yeah, you can say that again. Keeping the fans on the toes, aren't they? Like you said, going from Toulouse to Smith, McGuire, a lot's gone on, but it's never goes simple, does it? Derby week.
No, you're right. Yeah, Derby week. Yeah, we should have predicted it, shouldn't we? Really, even though I think it'd have been hard pressed to predict everything that has happened. And of course, obviously, while we're talking about the current Hull Kingston Rovers and what's happening in the future, we received the sad news, didn't we, that Zuk Camera sadly passed away. So we'll spend a little bit of time towards the back end of the podcast just paying tribute to him, because obviously it's very sad news indeed. But the Robins started on Saturday with a defeat to Toulouse, the bottom side in Super League. Mikey, we travelled across to France with a bit of a patched up squad. I think we only named 20 players, didn't we? And that included 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿, who by all accounts had no chance of playing whatsoever. Even so, it was a disappointing performance, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think a lot of fans maybe cautiously predicted a defeat, shall we say. I don't think it made it any easier after the fact. We almost got caught out in April, didn't we, when we travelled across there, and we was getting nilled at half-time, if you can remember back then. I think we were 12-0 down at half-time, and even this time round at 8-0, you still felt like we had half a chance of being able to sort of get back into the game. But yeah, very bitterly disappointed to go over there and to lose, even though I did feel like it was probably going to happen, but it wasn't any easier to accept.
Yeah, I'm just looking now. We've only played Toulouse 5 times. We've got a horrendous record against them.
Yeah, we've just won the one game, haven't we?
Yeah, which is obviously not good enough, is it? Obviously, Graham, it transpires, doesn't it, on the back of that result. A game that I think Neil Hudgell was actually at. I think he travelled across to France, so obviously he had a first-hand account of what happened on the pitch. But Toulouse fighting for their lives at the bottom of the league. Even so, some of the players, some of the senior pros should have been maybe putting the hand up and putting in more. Although, we did do it tough. Matty Staunton lasted 2 minutes and we never saw him again. And we saw in the Huddersfield semi-final, didn't we, when 𝐁𝐮𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵 had to go off early, that once you're down to 3 interchanges, no matter who you're playing, it's a tall order, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think so. I think even from the comment that Mikey made there about the trip back in April when it was, we should have learned there that it was going to be a tough game. We shouldn't have gone into that with a mindset that was, it's only Toulouse, it's the bottom of the league. You look at their results across home and away, and apart from a couple of blowouts they've had, they've been very, very competitive in the vast majority of their games, and especially at their home stadium. They should have been. And I, like many, I guess, predicted it and had a chat with my next door neighbour about it in the week leading up to it, and said this is a potential banana skin for us if we haven't got it right from minute one. And it transpired out like many thought it would do. But again, it's the level of performance that I think fans are looking for. Of, are we consistent enough? Have we got those ups and downs in us that the peaks and troughs that the good teams tend not to have such a wide range of? And again, it's just typical Rovers, you would call it, of the last few seasons, where we find it hard to put the sides to the sort who we think we should be beating and actually go ahead and execute that. And we seem to struggle, and we were 8-0 down and 14-0 down in the previous game against them. And we just make it so hard for ourselves. And as fans, you obviously want the best for the club, but you look at the levels of performance and think, did we take it easy? Did we go with the mindset of, well, we've got a patched up squad, it doesn't really matter, we're going to go and win ahead and win anyway? But again, that complacency, if we did have that, that's just a recipe for disaster from minute one. And when things do start to go against you with that sort of mindset, have we got the resilience to really fight back against it? Yeah,
and there's definitely something in that, isn't there? Because we've shown on a number of occasions under Tony Smith's reign that if Rovers start off fast and we get points on the board, we tend to go on and win the game. And what's becoming apparent recently is that if things don't go our way, there's no plan B. There's nothing we can do almost to change the course of the game. And obviously on Saturday it wasn't helped, Craig, by the fact that we had Ryan Hall missing and George King. Ben Crooks was moved over to the wing. 𝗷𝗵𝗿𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵 went to starting prop with Corbin Sims coming back into the side. But you only have to look at the meters made from the Robins to see what an impact it was not having Ryan Hall. I think there was only one player, Sean Kennedy-Dow, I think, who made over 100 metres. Everybody else was below that. And we saw in the Huddersfield game previous to that, if you make big meters, you end up scoring big points. And Huddersfield had numerous players who made over 100 metres. Toulouse, they had a few players who did that. And it was telling, wasn't it, that when Ryan Hall's out the side, we don't seem to have any player in back play or who can run it out of defence and make us them important meters.
No, I think you're spot on. I think Ryan Hall's one of those players he'd be missing any team. But yeah, I think we've lost our identity a little bit over the last so many games. I think I'd like to know the percentage of that squad on Saturday that was in the playoff game against Warrington the year before. Because even though, like Mike was saying, there was a feeling, I did have a feeling that we'd actually get beat, but it's the manner of the defeat. It was the manner of the defeat against Huddersfield. And I know, like, players going off early, it doesn't help. But for me, it was more about I don't like to say the players aren't trying, but one-on-one tackles, they're falling off them. We've not seen that from Rovers in a long time, in my opinion. So I was, even though I expected us to get beat, I was more disappointed with the manner of the defeat.
Yeah, and the manner of the defeat was very disappointing. As a number of games recently, Salford side, the Salford game aside, Rovers have been very disappointing for a number of weeks now. Do you think Mikey, obviously it transpires, Tony Smith has left. Do you think that performance was the final nail in the coffin for him?
Quite possibly. I think a lot of us have thought it's possibly been coming. I don't necessarily know if that was the 100% cause for it. I thought Jordan Abdull's interview he did with Hull 𝗵𝗿𝗄𝐿 was really good, really telling about some of the attitude that he had towards Tony Smith and towards some of his peers, because at the end of the day, you should be able to perform regardless of personal feelings towards somebody else, because there is a pride element that should come into it. I don't honestly believe it is solely down to the Tony Smith thing. I feel like there's an accumulation of various different things. We've not got much confidence. We've not really had the rub of the green. You look at the Halton disallowed try against Huddersfield with the video ref, which, okay, you could possibly argue that it wasn't a try, but it's incredibly unlucky to have that overturned after it went up as a try. I think we had 2 tries disallowed in Toulouse as well for one was for double movement. I think that was Halton again. I think Parcel had one as well. And just these little 50-50 decisions that when you're on the type of run that Rovers are on, you don't get these decisions. And I think that is very important, and that is quite telling in our form at the minute. Yeah,
definitely. But I think now, obviously, new regime, I think that result's done and gone, hasn't it? It's done now. Interestingly, Rovers tried a new approach. I think they go into Toulouse for Saturday's game. I think did they go the day before, stay the night, and then play obviously on the Saturday. Obviously, it didn't work. But then again, who knows? I think, like Mikey said, I don't think the result was what ended Tony Smith. I think there's been a number of things over a number of weeks. We'll talk about Tony Smith just a little bit now. Graham, I know things have turned a bit toxic, and fans were venting their anger and frustration, especially on Saturday. But ultimately, when Tony Smith returns to Craven Park, he'll be able to walk with his head held high, won't he, at the job and what he's managed to achieve in the time that he was at the club.
Yeah, I think so. And as a fan, you're always living in the here and now. And I think if you look at where Rovers were just short of 3 years ago when he did come and join the club, and to where we are now, and we've been not looking over our shoulder at that trapdoor as often. We've been consistently competing for the top 6 in the last couple of years, and obviously getting to the semi-final last season and Challenge Cup this season. So I think there's definite progress made, and I think for me as a fan, that for me in the long term is progress, and moving forward, I think more building on top of that to get more progress moving in the years to come under the new coach. I think there's got to be the aim. I don't think we can go from zeros to heroes in a short time. You've got to build toward that. And I think that the squad that's been assembled has got one eye on that. I think for me, the consistently consistent message is what I'm looking for as a fan. Are we consistent over a longer period of time, rather than just having bursts of 4 or 5 games and then dropping off for 4 or 5, 6 games? Good champion teams don't have the runs that we sort of go on a regular basis of poor performances, poor results. So I think, going back to previous comments around Tony Smith, I think there's probably a culmination as fans, and you look for something to blame, if you like, for we don't understand what goes on Monday to Fridays, and we only see the 18 minutes on game day. So we don't know what goes on a lot behind the scenes, and can only see and judge what we see and read in the press and see with our own eyes and ears at the weekends, and we form our opinions on that. So, like others, I think there are probably other things behind the scenes, and you would hope that the players are professional enough to understand what's going on, and it happens in sport. I'm sure it's not the first time it's happened to them, and won't be the last time. But we've got to move on. We've got to look forward to that new coach coming in. I'm sure there'll be some new ideas. Hopefully be a continuation of the good things that we've built in through Tony Smith's 3 years with us. And if we can iron out some of that consistency and become consistently consistent as opposed to consistently inconsistent, then I feel we're on the right track to being up there and challenging over the coming years.
Yeah, and we've seen that with Craig, this side can run a run of results together. And we saw that, frustratingly, just prior to Tony Smith announcing his departure from the club. When, a club equaling run of results, which is probably why and people started to get frustrated when we started to lose a few games just because of the manner of how Tony announced his departure. He was going to depart from the club. I called out at the time and I said, look, if he keeps winning, nobody will bat an eyelid. As soon as you lose 2 or 3 games on a trot, the daggers, the knives will be out on Tony Smith, and they'll say it's all because of what he's done. But like Graham's already mentioned, and Mike, these are professional players, you know, and like Mike said about the Jordan Abdul interview, he praised him to the hilt and said it was because of Tony Smith that he got his England call up, he's had some better form, etc. And there's a lot of players who have alluded their performances to Tony Smith. So I suppose it's sad in a way how it's panned out over the last few weeks that these players haven't been able to get the results for Tony Smith.
No, it's kind of, for me, it's a bittersweet moment because I do feel like we've played some of the best rugby I've seen in years. And there was, you know, the potential was there. We was moving forward as a club on and off the field. And I think we've discussed it on other podcasts before. The announcement, the way announced it, wasn't great. And like I said, you look, as soon as you start losing a couple, fans are going to start questioning. The media get on your back. Fans buy into the media. And basically, you're not going to come out of that situation well unless the team start winning. I think, you know, some of the players that have come out and said, you know, thanking Tony Smith and everything like that, you know, he's brought him to the club, he's given him a chance. But for me as well, the players had to play for the club first. I know, like Jordan Abdul, I think with Mike, what he said about the interview, you know, it was great what he came out and said, but I think as a club, something wasn't right. And I think if any club was lost, was it 8 of the last, or 1 in 8? I think there'd be automatic pressure anyway. But I think it was just Tony Smith was highlighted more because of the announcement.
Yeah, and for you, Mike, how would you sum up Tony Smith's Hull Kingston Rovers career for you?
I think I want to call it memorable. It gave me some experiences and emotions that I've not really experienced at rugby for quite a few years. You know, you think back to even if you just think back to singular games, you know, the Wigan away victory in 2021, where with a defending masterclass, where we went across there and won for the first time in however many years. You know, Wigan at home, the playoff game against Warrington. You know, we've had moments that you really have to kind of really hold on to because there were such special moments at that time. And okay, we never won anything, we never achieved anything. I fully understand that, but we're on the track to be able to actually achieve something with this team. And hopefully, even though Tony is going, we're going to be able to see the majority of the playing group that we've got reassembled under a new coach and under a new regime to really try and reach that next level.
Yeah. And I think ultimately, you know, I'm getting a bit annoyed. Well, not annoyed, but we're talking a lot about next season. The next, you know, announcements have been made, etc., etc. And for me, you know, we've still got 10 games of this season to play. This season isn't done and dusted. And I think ultimately something had to change because the run of results that we was on, you know, in a way you couldn't see it turning round. So I think something definitely had to happen. But I suppose the biggest accolade I can give Tony Smith is that he's give Rovers fans the opportunity to dream again and be confident and look upwards rather than downwards. For so long, you know, supporters of my generation, maybe yours, Mike, yours as well, Craig, you know, we haven't had the glory years that Graham's experienced. And at the moment now, there's a different feeling around the club. There's a movement, isn't there, for us to be better. And you know, at the moment, we're annoyed because we've fallen out of the playoff places, but we're not worried about being relegated. We're worried that we won't be in the playoffs at the end of the season. And in the short space of time that Tony Smith's been here, he's given us that chance to do that. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see, obviously, over the few next coming weeks or whatever, if Tony Smith does an interview or whatever, to see what his thoughts are on Kingston Rovers and his time at the club. And it'll also be interesting to see where he ends up. Obviously, loads of rumours being bandied around at the moment where he's going to go to Leeds. Bradford was also one, but I see that they've just confirmed a new head coach and Brian Noble's going back to Bradford. So, yeah, it'll be very interesting. And, of course, we recorded a Red Robin podcast special on Monday evening in the wake of Tony Smith leaving the club. So you can catch that on on podcasts, and it's also available on YouTube. So give that a listen. There's a lot more time spent there talking about Tony Smith. But Tony Smith's gone, and Danny McGuire has been appointed interim head coach, and he's also signed a brand new 3-year contract. Obviously, there's been a lot of fans clamouring for Danny McGuire to take the head coach role. People wanting to see him, especially to the end of the season. In a way, Graham, do you think that the fact we've got Willie Peters appointed for next season, that it just lifts a bit of pressure off Danny McGuire? Because obviously, if he was successful, people would be clamouring for him to be the next coach, etc. But also the fact he's got a new free contract as well, it firmly puts him in as assistant to Willie Peters. I suppose it's is it a no-lose situation for Danny McGuire?
I think so. Yeah, I think he's got a free hit, hasn't he? He can, he's going to provide that continuity at the moment when I think probably some players might need that. The arm around the shoulder type of approach for some of them. So I think he's got that ability to do that, having been at the club for the last 3 or 4 seasons as a player and obviously as assistant more recently. I think he can, moving forward, provide that link between a new coach coming in and the existing player regime as well. So I think he'll be looking to he openly admits in his interviews this week that he's nowhere near a head coach material. He's got lots and lots to learn. Whilst he learnt a lot from Tony Smith, I'm sure he'll also be looking to learn from Peters when he comes in, and feathering his own cap for future years as a proper head coach in his own rights. But this will give him a little bit of, as you say, a free hit in terms of taking the big decisions himself, seeing what motivates players. Can he do that? Can he inspire the players to turn up on a weekend and put an 80-minute performance in, and then have the comfort of knowing that if it doesn't work out, he's got the new head coach coming in and he can continue to be successful, hopefully with us. For that next 3-year period, which again I think is a good sign of stability within the club, as well as all the on-the-field retentions that we've had of those young players as well. I think McGuire's a really off-the-field important retention for us.
Definitely, and it sort of sneaked in on it, mate. That 3-year contract extension. You also had to read the small print when it was announced that it was taken over. But I suppose, Mike, you're close to the club, and I suppose while Danny McGuire might not be under pressure, I suppose the club are under a bit of pressure because they can't afford for us to stagnate, can they? We can't afford to have these last 10 games sort of peter out without Rovers, really, making a charge for the playoffs kind of thing. We've seen all the off-field stuff, 𝗔𝗰𝗰𝐿𝐵𝐵𝐺, everything that's going around. There's a real good atmosphere around the club. I suppose we need a good end to the season, don't we, to really then get people interested for the season after that.
Absolutely, Chris. And I think one point that you kind of touched upon it a moment ago about there is still something to play for this year. And I think the fact that the club have made a decision on Tony Smith now tells you that there is people in the hierarchy at the club that believe exactly what you've just said. Because if that wasn't the case, it would have been quite easy to let Tony Smith see the season out, potentially lose a derby at the weekend. We've got Wakefield at home the week after. If you are going to stand down your head coach, this was probably the right time to do it on a Monday morning with a full build week up into what is going to be a very interesting derby game. You're right about what you say when we think about the progression for next season, but you're correct, Chris. We've got to look at this year as well and sort of see what we can actually still achieve, because the playoffs aren't out of reach. If we can win our next 2 games, the playoffs are very much within the reach for this club. Just very quickly, as you said about Danny McGuire, I'll be honest, I was a little bit disappointed at the way that the 3-year contract for Danny McGuire was announced, in the fact that it's something that is very big news, I believe, for the future of our club. And it would have been nice to have had Danny get a little bit more sort of respect on his name, if you like, on the basis of having it announced, on its own little announcement, shall we say, opposed to it being in the small print behind Tony leaving. I think it could have been done that it was announced that Tony was leaving and that Danny was taking temporary charge. Wednesday morning, you announced that Danny McGuire signed a new 3-year contract. We know a lot of these contracts aren't necessarily agreed and signed on the day that they're announced. Obviously, we've announced that Frankie Halton has signed. That probably wasn't today. That was maybe last week or even the week before. We placed these agreements and we announced them, I believe, so that they're when we need that little bit of a pick-me-up. And we spoke about all of these different things that have happened in this derby week. And I don't think any of us are naive enough to realise that the derby is still, 40 hours away. There is a lot that can happen in the next 2 days.
Yeah, there's a hell of a lot. And and also, it shows you how quickly things moved, isn't it? Because, Tony Smith departs, Danny McGuire is appointed interim head coach, and then the following day, Brett Delaney comes in as forwards coach from the York City Knights, where he's been assistant. Obviously, he'll be helping Danny McGuire out with the first team, I think, as a whole for now, until the end of the season. But I suppose, Graham, how surprised was you to see that news?
Yeah, it certainly wasn't one that I'd heard as any sort of rumour at all. But again, just reading on what McGuire said about that particular appointment, and I think first and foremost, he's been brought in to work with the forwards on defensive qualities. And when McGuire talks about Brett Delaney, he talks about him as one of the hardest defensive players to play against. So if we can harness some of that knowledge and experience that he's got over his playing career with, in Australia, and then obviously where we really know him from at Leeds Rhinos, if he can instill that into those young players who we seem to be building up, the Minchellas of this world, the Haltons of this world, and help to improve them more, I think that'll be a really good thing. McGuire speaks highly enough of him, so that's good enough for me. If he thinks highly of him, then yeah, I think it'll be a good appointment for us. Yeah,
I'm interested to know where this link has come from, really. Whether it's Danny McGuire who's really pushed for it, or I'm trying to find a link between Willie Peters and him, but I can't find one at the moment. Because obviously, Willie Peters head coach, obviously Danny McGuire, very good friends with Brett Delaney. So yeah, I'm just trying to work out the dynamics on this one. But Willie Peters is obviously on board with it. He said, I know Brett wouldn't ask the players to do something he wasn't willing to do himself. Brett will bring that aggressive style we want at Hull KR. I'm really comfortable and happy with the staff we have heading into next season. What might have been missed as well is there's a bit of a shake-up with the coaching setup next season. So it appears that Brett Hodgson, Danny McGuire and Dave Hodgson will be Willie Peters' assistant coaches, with Stanley Jean taking a more of a development role, working with Rovers Academy and less involvement with the first team. Obviously, we've seen in the wake of Danny McGuire being appointed interim head coach, Stanley Jean and Kevin Dayton have took on the reserve duty. Of course, they suffered defeat last night to Hull FC in the derby reserve game. So yeah, it's not just change at the top. There's a bit of change everywhere, isn't there, Craig, at the moment? But it can only be a positive that we've managed to get Brett Delaney in so early.
Yeah, I'm seeing it as a positive, to be honest. With the thing with Brett Delaney, he's going to be here next year. I think McGuire touched on that, getting him into the club now, getting used to his surroundings, getting used to some of the players that will be here next year. I think it'll only benefit him in the long run. But I think something else did need to change defensively. Like I said earlier, falling off tackles, getting sloppy. Sometimes it just takes someone else to come in to get that enthusiasm back. I am hoping over the next few weeks, month or so, to see a bit more of an aggressive Rovers in defence.
Yeah, and let's be honest, Mike. As much as we've been famed for our attacking rugby league and off the cuff rugby league, etc., defence hasn't been particularly our strongest point for a couple of seasons now, has it? Although we've had fits and starts where it has been well. But one thing that I'm really excited about is obviously Brett Delaney coming in, having a specific role around working with the forwards and the defensive side of the game, but also how Jessie is supposed to be coming in and complementing that. Willie Peters spoke about how Jessie is an extremely good professional, how Newcastle actually brought him in for that role to help him mould and guide the younger players. And of course, we've got some outstanding young forwards: George King, Matty Staunton, Lewis Johnson, Frankie Halton. So it's going to be exciting to see what happens next season with the new setup, and it's good to see that Willie Peters is actually already thinking ahead to how he wants us to be structured for next season.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see sort of spits and spurts of that towards the back end of this season as well. Obviously, there's been a lot said about Brett Delaney and the time that he spent in the forwards, but I can remember him playing in the centres as well for Leeds as well. So it's not just necessarily maybe about his defending from a forward perspective. He'll maybe be able to sort of work defensively with the backs, and it's something where hopefully that dynamic will be able to kind of sort of develop throughout. And when you look at sort of like Willie Peters, who's coming in, a former halfback, you've got Danny McGuire, who was a former halfback. He needs maybe to have somebody in the hierarchy in the coaching of the club that is going to be more defence orientated, because we've maybe got the attacking trait, shall we say, down to a T. So having somebody who's going to be able to support with the defensive side of the game is going to be really vital to our chances.
Yeah, very exciting indeed. And of course, Brett Delaney, the appointment of him doing nothing to aid our, the overtures that we get from Leeds, to say that we're just the sort of retirement home, or Leeds Rhinos, Mark B, what have you. But actually, the difference is now we've got people coming from Leeds, etc., who are at the sort of top end of the career now. And it seems to be that Leeds are blowers, so long may that continue. Some more good news, Graham. Frankie Halton staying with us until at least the end of 2025. If you believe newspaper reports, there was some NRL interest in him. I think Gold Coast Titans and Newcastle had been linked. What has he done? He's played 12 games for us, I think, this season, 12 or 13 games. He's hit the ground running to the point where he's probably one of the first names on the team sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like many, it would have been a bit of a Frankie Who at the beginning of the season, of what's he done. He's come up from Championship level and actually proved that he's worthy of Super League, status, and like many would agree, probably worthy of a starting share every single week as well, even though it's only been 12, 13 weeks that he's been playing with us. So I've been really impressed with him. His work ethic is very good. His defensive qualities have been very good. He's decent with ball in hand as well. He gets on the end of things as well. He pops up with a try every now and again, or not if the video ref doesn't allow it. But he seems like he's got an all-around game as a young player, a young hungry player who's worked his way up through Championship level, getting that opportunity at Super League level. And looks like, if he continues as he is, he looks like he's going to take that with both hands. And who knows where he can go to after that. And if we can guide him well and establish him as a regular first team player, then I think he could be a very, very good player indeed. And you're probably all aware of the rumour mills around contracts and that. Was that just a lever that was pulled to generate a contract at Rovers? Was there any merits in some of the Australian interest, and is that right for him now at the stage of his career? Who knows? But I'm really, really pleased that we've managed to nail him down for extra time with us.
Yeah, he's dependable, isn't he, Craig? You look at his stats. Some people don't really value stats, etc. But when you look at his tackles, his carries, his meters, he's very consistent.
I was just about to say, consistent springs to mind. Like Graham said, coming from Championship club, fans would have given him time, but he's hit the ground running. He's consistent, like with his meter making, his tackling. And for me, it was important that we tied him down to another deal, because he's only going to get better. Whether the rumours, were true or not, it doesn't matter. For me, if as a club you want to progress, you've got to stand down your best players.
Yeah, definitely. And he's definitely a player that I think Willie Peters is going to be looking forward to working with, isn't he, next season, Mike?
Yeah, when I watch him, I get quite excited by when he has the ball in his hand, and even when he's defending, he's got a lot about him. He's a really, really good rugby league player, and we've seen across the Super League that there's some really good hidden gems in that championship, and I feel like we got a little bit of stick at the end of last season for dipping into that championship market and pulling out one or two players. But Frankie Halton, for me, is probably our signing of the season, and he's possibly in the top 5 signings of the season in the Super League. So for us to be able to sort of retain him for an extra couple of years, obviously he was already under contract for next season anyway, but to give him that 2-year extension, which he's rightly earned, and I'd like to think there's a little bit of a wage increase in there for him as well. And hopefully we'll see him blossom over the next 3 years. Yeah.
And there's got to be, aren't they? Because you'd imagine if the club's offering it once a time down, Frankie Halton's got a bit of power there, hasn't he, to say, well, hang on, if you want me that bad, let's have a bit more money then kind of thing. He said after signing his contract, I can knuckle down now, knowing I'm going to be here for the next few years. I've settled in really well with the team, the club and the city as well. Hull feels like home, and I think that's helped me on the pitch too. I think that is one of the features. I know Frankie Halton's moved to Hull. I know Matty Staunton has. I know Ryan Milnes has. And for too often, haven't we, Graham, seen players sign for Rovers but not probably fully commit to the full deal, especially when we've signed players over from the Northwest, etc. But it's good to see that the movement in the club seems to be different. There seems to be more of a demand on the players. Like, hey, if we are going to sign you, you are going to come, then you need to really invest into it. And these younger players as well. I mean, I say younger. Frankie Halton's 26, but 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗁𝗁𝗍𝐿, Matty Staunton, Frankie Halton, even 𝐁𝐮𝐵𝐿𝐼, etc. They really seem to be buying into the club and what's happening there. So it's. I suppose when Frankie Halton signs, it also makes other players look at it and go, well, do you know what? I think there's something happening here.
Yeah, and I sort of go back to the Tony Smith point, and is that an environment that Tony Smith has created for people to want to do that? Because you alluded to some of the players that we've signed who maybe do travel or live historically from the Northwest or certainly the Leeds area, where they're just used to travel in every day, and you can imagine how laborious that M62 journey is every day if you have to do that, and how much does that impact on your enjoyment of being at the club if you have to do it every day for 3 years. It
wasn't that long ago, I don't think, where Joel Tompkins was driving in from Wigan, I think, every
yeah, exactly, and that we got bits and pieces out of him, but it wasn't really the Joel Tompkins we were expecting, I don't think. So was his heart really in it? Possibly not, but you get the feeling that with the players who are committing themselves to the city and committing themselves to those longer term deals, like they're all all those ones that we've mentioned are all sort of tied down now for a good few years. So there's that stability there, which can hopefully feed improvement and feed each other and spur each other on. They're all part of the environment, the East Hull ethos that we have about wearing the badge and the shirt, etc. They seem to get it. And that's that I sort of probably allude to some of that being down to Tony Smith's impact as well of pride in the club, pride in the shirt, etc., and attracting these players over in the first place and showcasing what good young players they are, and then turn them into hopefully even better players for us.
Yeah, and talking about younger players, Craig, Louis Senior signing from Huddersfield.
What a shock that was. Finishing work to that one. At first I was getting a bit confused which one we'd sign, because I knew obviously the twins, the one at Huddersfield.
You weren't hoping for Ings, was you? You weren't hoping for his brother?
No, not now. But no, I think he's played, is it 36 games for Huddersfield and scored 22 tries, and that's in Super League. And I think he needed game time. I know he's got speed, which is something we definitely need. He's quite tall, and I think again the move will do him the world of good sometimes when you're not playing regularly and you can fall out of love with the game. But he seems quite enthusiastic about coming to the club. Again, on loan to the end of the season, and is it a 2-year deal he's got after that? And again, he spoke to Willie Peters. So obviously, he sold him the club to him. And hopefully, he'll just get better and better the more he's around the club. And especially, well, he will when you work alongside players like Kenny Dowell, Ryan Hall.
Yeah, you mentioned Ryan Hall. And obviously, Mike, it throws up the question, doesn't it? Where does Louis Senior sort of fit in at the moment? Because we've got Ryan Hall, who's going to be around for next season. Ethan Ryan, who's managed to make that sort of right wing spot his own. We've obviously got Will Tate, although whether he's seen more as a centre. There's going to be competition for places next season, isn't there? And someone like Louis Senior with pace, and to be fair, that is one thing we've been crying out for, isn't it? A bit of pace.
Yeah, of course it is. You look at your key positions, and for me, you've got to be having 3 places for each starting. So, for example, you have 2 wingers that start a game. you need a third winger to be able to put pressure on both of your starting wingers. You've got to have that kind of competition. We look at halfbacks. We've got 3 very good halfbacks on their day. And it's important to try and keep that level of consistency in terms of competition for places going across the entire field. So I'm not too concerned that we've got somebody like Lewis Senior who's coming in looking for a first team place, because I almost want him to try and dislodge Ryan Hall or Ethan Ryan, because that will then spare them on to think, well, actually, there's a little bit of pressure coming in now. Just a quick word on Lewis Senior. I could remember one game. I could remember watching him for one game this year, and it was against Wigan. It was the week after the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup. And both Huddersfield and Wigan played a weakened team against each other. And he scored a hat-trick on that day, and he did actually have the opportunity to get another one, but he knocked on going over the line. So it was good to be able to watch him, because there was a few different tries, a few different sort of elements of skill that was required to sort of finish those moves off. So you think back as well, 12 months ago, we'd signed Sam Wood. We was probably having very similar conversations about Sam Wood a year ago, and now a year on, we're very pleased to have him as part of our squad. So hopefully Lewis will slot in just nicely.
Yeah, and Graham, I suppose, are we being a bit naive to expect Ryan Hall to be playing every game next season as he has done now, obviously, in course, before his injury? Yeah. I suppose we need a bit of backup, don't we? We need a bit of competition for places. With Ryan Hall approaching the end of his career.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. And I think, Ryan Hall's one of those ultimate professionals who looks after himself. He does everything right during the week. He does everything right away from game time in terms of preparing his body at the age he's at for the rigours of the next week. So I think, he's not getting any younger. He's one of our, as we've alluded to, one of our top meter makers out of backfield. There's tackle 2 out of our own 20 where you need to get some good solid yards. So he's been very, very good at that for us. But that whole left edge is quite old, and again, is this part of the succession planning for that particular edge with the signings that are coming in? So yes, he may be 3 into 2 next season, but realistically, is Ryan Hall going to go anywhere with us after next season? ? So then, does he naturally have a ready-made spot available when we start to backfill that way? So I think there's hopefully a bit of that competition that the others talked about there and pushing each other on. But I'd also like to think that with the rest of this season plus 2 seasons as well after that there's an element of succession planning being thought into it.
Yeah, definitely. And when he signed his contract, he mentioned that he knows Sam Wood from Huddersfield, and he's only said good things about the place, and it sold it to him, really. He said, personally, I needed to change things up, and I'm happy to be joining Hull KR. I need game time for my development, and I want to be consistently be playing Super League to reach my potential. Hull KR play an expansive brand of rugby. I can't wait to be getting ball in space and show the fans what I can do. I've already spoken to Willie about his plans, and I'm looking forward to working with him next year. I don't know. I'd say reading in between the lines, the fact they've brought him in earlier than expected. I don't know, Graham. Do you reckon Ryan Hall's not fit for Sunday, and his injury might be a bit more severe than what we first thought? Yeah,
if you're a young kid and you can deal with injuries a lot better. You recover a lot quicker. Your body heals a lot quicker. When you're in your mid-30s, the body takes a lot longer to repair, and as we all know, rugby is an unforgiving game when it comes to your body and what you're asked to do week in, week out. So, yeah, I think there's a little bit of one eye on Ryan Hall's fitness overall, but like I said a minute ago, I think there's that element of 22-year-old kid, potential Sam Wood link up with Senior as that potential left edge with Lewis Johnson inside it. That's got the makings of a potential for a few years to come. So I'd like to think there's a bit of cover, and that's smart thinking from us, but also with one eye on the future as well.
Yeah, and it also shows, doesn't it, that like Brett Delaney in Senior, they've only been triggered by Tony Smith's departure, because obviously these are very much Willie Peters signings. So obviously that it speeded up that. I think the Ryan Hall injury is a rib cartilage injury. I don't think there's anything you can do. I don't think there's painkillers, anything. It's purely once it's healed, you can play. But it's that sore and such a bad injury that you can't be patched up. So, hey, if it means him missing the derby and it makes him fit for the remainder of the season, then I think, we want to get away from playing patched up players, don't we? It's been a symptom of Rovers for a long time where we've had players out on the pitch that were nowhere near fit, and it's come back to bite us. So hopefully, the club are taking precautions, and it looks like the signing of Senior definitely alludes to that. We mentioned Sam Wood there a bit. Craig, where do you think Sam Wood fits in now for Hull Kingston Rovers? Obviously, he had a bit of a dodgy start to his Rovers career, didn't he? We've seen him second row. We've seen him centre. We've seen him out on the wing. Where do you think his best position for us is?
For me, it's centre. I think he had them the first two games where, if I remember rightly, I want to say was he centre on the wing? The first couple of games, I think he was on the wing, wasn't he?
Wing.
Yeah, and then since he moved into centre, the injury came at the wrong time because I thought he was playing some great rugby, defensively and attacking, and it showed against Hull that the quality he's got, skill level. So for me, yeah, it's interesting because if we've signed that other Aussie from Parramatta, I'm not going to try and pronounce his name because I've tried a million times and I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah, it's going to be interesting where he does fit in for next year because I can't see him dropping Kenny Dowell. I feel like he's just going to be the captain. So yeah, it's a good question actually, but for me, I think you've got to play him centre.
Yeah, it's interesting, Mikey. Where do you think he might line up for us?
I think it'll be centre as well. I've been keeping stats this season, so I can tell you that Sam Wood's played the first 6 games on the wing this season, and I think
Mikey, is that spreadsheet you got shareable?
Maybe. Yeah, to be fair, mate, I'm quite happy to support you with some stats. I've just been logging everything, mainly for my shirts. You might not be,
Yeah, well, I'll come to that at the end of the podcast. You can give us an update.
So yeah, I've been keeping stats, and I think Graham brought up a really good point about when you think about the left edge. We've got Hall, we've got Kenny Dowell, we've got Lynette. That is an aging left edge, and it is almost going to be a transitional period of us being able to slot other players in. And it's going to get to a point where at the end of next season, there's a really, really big decision to make because the chances are I would have guessed at least 2, if not all 3 of them may move on. And if that is the case, you don't want to be completely rebuffing, an edge of your field. So you might actually see somebody like Sam Wood playing on the left edge opposed to him being on the right. It's one of those we really don't know where things are going to go. But if we are looking at Sam Wood, I would have said I prefer watching him in the centres.
Yeah, I do think with Wood, his utility value is probably where he's going to be utilised most, which becomes a bit of a problem for the player himself, doesn't it? And I always look back to Craig Hall in that he ended up being too good playing a number of positions that he's never able to nail down one position for himself because of his versatility. And I do think Sam Wood's starting to maybe fit into that 𝗔𝗰𝗿𝐿𝐼 kind of mould where he's great having on the bench because he can play, a number of positions. Although I do remember when we played Toulouse last time, he got hooked, didn't he, by Tony Smith and I think he was playing second row. And I don't think he never came back on after I think he missed a tackle or something like that. But he's a young, hungry British player who's got bags of potential. He's obviously got size. He's got it all in front of him. And who knows? We could see a right edge of Sam Wood and Louis Senior next season. I suppose though, Craig, it pretty much looks like it spells the end of Ben Crooks at Hull Kingston Rovers. You can't imagine him being around now with the players that we've got, and obviously with the signing of Senior.
No, definitely not. And I think it's a tough one when you kind of it's coming as a fan. You see players and you can give your opinions on. I won't give them a contract and stuff, but when it's like a player of Crooks, so he isn't consistently good, but he'll always give something. He'll always try, but you know, I think for me, probably is a time for him. It is to go at the end of the season, in my opinion. But yeah, you know, I wish he was more consistent in terms of the good stuff he can do.
Yeah, Graham is. I mean, obviously, you know, he might still be around next season. Who knows? You know, stranger things have happened. But you know, Ben Crooks, he has been a fantastic servant to the club, hasn't he? And he's one of them who, again, you know, if he ever came back to the club, he'd always be able to walk around with his head held high.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he probably falls into that category, John, that you mentioned. You know, the Craig Halls and that he's filled in at fullback. He's done the wing. He's done the centre, and he's never really had that consistent run. He's had a couple of injuries to deal with as well recently. And he hasn't really been able to make a position his own and nail his colours to it. And you know, he's got the odd mistake or two in him, like everybody has, but he shows flashes of what he can do, and you think, go on, then we want more to see more of that and be like that. But then all of a sudden, he gets shifted position potentially to cover somewhere else, and like I say, it's just a bit stuttery for players like Crooks in. With all the players coming in, it's hard to see why you would sign these players and not play them over and above what you've got already. Otherwise, what's the point in signing them? You're actually going to hoard players for no reason whatsoever. So, yeah, I think it's probably one of those where he's been very, very good for us. He's worked well for us in a number of areas, including that utility role, and got us out of a jam a few times. But again, I think, you know, we compare left and right edges. That right edge for us has been weaker in terms of both defence and attack, I think, historically over the last few seasons. And he's been part of that. And as much as I enjoy watching his sort of enthusiasm and attitude, etc., again, I want to see more of that consistent good stuff he can do and not get caught out, as much in terms of some of the defensive. However, having said that, I thought defensively he's been probably one of our better backs recently, notwithstanding the results aside. But I think he's been one of those who has shown up well in defence.
Yeah, difficult one. And my limited knowledge of sport, if you've been playing 9 games in a row, whatever, at centre, and then all of a sudden you shifted over to a wing on the opposite side, it's difficult, isn't it? It's a difficult, no matter whether you're a professional sportsman, how much money you earn or anything, it's a hard thing to do. But anyway, who knows? He might still be around, and if he is, well, good luck to him. But Mikey, it's Derby week. It's almost like we've forgotten it that we've got a derby at the end of the week. What's your thoughts on the Magic Weekend concept as a whole?
I enjoy watching the Magic Weekend concept from my home, I'll be honest. I prefer watching it on telly more so than attending. I've frequented quite a lot of away games this year. I've been to various different places, but the Magic Weekend is just one that I quite like to sit in front of the box and just watch a game back to back to back. I think a lot of that came through the lockdown as well. All the games was on telly, and it was quite enjoyable to be able to watch some of the more neutral games where you're not necessarily pulling your hair out or pulling your teeth out watching your team play. But I see the appeal to it. I think the one thing I would maybe say is I wish it was played in just a maybe slightly smaller stadia. I feel they maybe do just over-egg it a little bit. And it really annoys me as well when they put this big attendance out at the end of the weekend and say that 65,000 people have attended when most of those have been counted twice. I feel like it's maybe a slightly fabricated number if somebody's gone for the weekend. So I think maybe a smaller stadia is probably the way forward for the Magic Weekend. Yeah,
well, on that, I can tell you, Mikey, that the highest attendance recorded at a Magic Weekend is... I can't tell you. I can tell you. 66,276, which is obviously over Saturday, Sunday. That was in 2016. The highest Saturday attendance was 40,871. That was in 2015 at Newcastle. And the highest Sunday attendance has been 32,953. And that was back in 2012 at Manchester. So there you go. Why do we need to hold it in a stadium that holds 47,000, 50,000, whatever it might be? It shows you really, doesn't it? Yeah, I don't know. I just think the format is just a little bit tired now. I've been to loads of these Magic weekends, and very rarely do supporters stay and watch all the games. You get people who might catch the end of the game before or what have you. But I don't know. Maybe it's time for something different, whatever that may be. Craig, you win on Sunday?
I'm going for the full weekend. It's my stag weekend.
Oh, is it? So, wow! Congratulations.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I might not be saying that Monday morning when I wake up, but
yeah. I was going to say as well, how to ruin a good stag do. Rovers going to get beat. It's like, he saved the piss.
I know, but no. To be honest, I always go to the Magic weekends. The one thing that has bothered me this time round, it's not on a bank holiday.
Yeah.
If you're going to do a weekend like that, you've got to pick your weekends, and if the stadium's not available over a bank holiday, move venue. Obviously in the north. But no, I think personally for me, it's a brilliant concept. You can. I talk to the fans, get their opinions on what how they feel on their team. That the banter's good. It's an overall good weekend for me.
Yeah. I just wish they'd stop putting Rovers on on Sunday.
Yeah,
it's an absolute killer. But we go into that game obviously with a bit of a depleted squad again. Obviously, we haven't got any squad news yet. That'll be out at lunchtime tomorrow. Hull FC are obviously going through their annual injury crisis. And despite being able to field a full reserve side last night, they had to bring in 3 loan players for Sunday's game, which is staggering considering they've brought in 3 youngsters. But Graham, is this one of them? Well, I was going to say before the news broke this week about everything what's happened, I was almost going to say it's our least anticipated derby for a long time. But obviously, it's definitely whetted the appetite for Rovers fans, probably more than it has the black and whites. But would we be wrong to go into that game with too confident?
Have we got any confidence at the minute to take into that game?
We've got Brett Delaney, we've got Lewis Senior, we've got he's going to slap all defence out. Senior's going to run a full length try.
I try and be as positive on everything as possible, John. And I think we're probably more confident than the black and whites. That's probably just as where we're at the minute in terms of the levels of performance. The results aren't going either side's way, so it could be, it could be hopefully the game that sparks us into life. And there's nothing better than to get yourself up for a derby game, whether it's your first one or your 101st one. The hairs on the back of the neck will be standing up no matter what sort of form you're in. We always say the form book goes out the window, blah blah blah, with derbies. And I think it's come at a fantastic time for us with needing to show improvement, needing to show change. They're on a really poor run at the minute. They've got injuries left and right, and suspensions as well to worry about. They got absolutely battered at the weekend, so their confidence is going to be absolutely rock bottom. We've not got a better chance to show ourselves what we can do and to show everybody else that actually that run we've just been on was a blip. We're over it now. Let's put it to bed. Let's kick on for the rest of the season and use this game as a real springboard to do that.
Yeah, and Mikey, it is a game like no other, isn't it? Because like Graham said, it don't matter what your form is going into it. It don't matter what team you put out. We've seen on so many occasions that all that stuff just doesn't count, and it's literally who can play better on the day, who gets the rub of the green, who can get the mistake that goes in their favour, who can create a bit of magic, which is why it don't matter for me. It don't matter what lineup they put out. A derby is the derby, and anything can happen.
Yeah, you're not wrong. When you look at it, I think this is probably one of the hardest to call derbies in years. Yeah, we always say, it's derby week, the form book goes out the window, that old cliche, and both clubs are probably thinking, thank God for that, because neither of us have got any form. It's one of those games where I've had multiple conversations this week with both Rovers fans and Hull fans with regards to the game. And one of the comments I've been making is it possible for both to lose? Because that's kind of like the atmosphere that I feel like it's almost generating. It could be 0-0, it could be 40-40. you know, it's one of those games where it's so difficult to call. And it's going to be who wants it most on that day. You know, we're going to have sort of 17 blokes on either side, and the ones that turn up will win. And we just got to make sure that we're riled up more than they are.
Yeah, it is a tough one to call, isn't it? But what you suggest is, Craig, even though we've got a number of injuries, you know, squad-wise, team-wise, I don't want to say stronger, but I don't know. We seem to have a few more experienced professionals in our ranks who should be fit for Sunday more than what they do.
Yeah, I think we've got enough out on the field to win the game. I think Hull possibly tried to kind of get a bit of enthusiasm around the place with the 3 loan signings, but I just thought it was great that it was like kind of Rovers just waited for them to come out with something, and then they make their announcements. Like you said at the beginning of the show, you know, it's give the fans a buzz again. You know, I've got a buzz since the signings, and you know, Frankie Halton, McGuire. I think they want to. I believe the players will want a power performance. It's in front of the cameras, hopefully a big audience, and they'll want to get McGuire off to a winning start. So yeah, I think we've got enough.
All I'm going to say to you is, Craig, make sure you record it, because if you're on your stag do and it kicks off at 5:30, there's no chance whatsoever you're going to be remembering the result or the performance whatsoever. So you can save
you're probably right.
Yeah, and then if they do get beat, you don't need to watch it either way, do you? So, but no, I suppose $1 million question is, Graham. Danny McGuire's in charge. Apparently, he's been pushing for youth to be getting more of a looking at Rovers. Rumours are circulating that Zak Fishwick wasn't included in the reserves set up last night because he's going to be featuring in the squad for Sunday. I mean, it'd be a massive call if he does come in, because you'd imagine there's going to be some senior players displaced as a result.
You would expect, unless there's injuries that we don't know about for those positions. But again, you look back to where McGuire was in his career. He was sort of thrown in with Sinfield, with Rob Burrow, all at the same time as young, inexperienced people, and you know, look what that's done for them in the longer term. And as a one-off game, you know, that's not going to define anybody's career. But if McGuire trusts in the player, then you know, who are we to sort of question that? They've got to start somewhere. Why not start in a big game like a derby? They're going to be up for it. They know the score between the rivalry anyway. So yeah, and if it's merited, and if McGuire thinks it's the right call to make, then let's back him. Let's back the kid if he gets an opportunity. You know, let's see what he can do.
Yeah, and Mike, it's difficult because obviously we don't know what the squad is for Sunday. Like Graham said, there could be injuries we're not sure about or we don't know about yet. But are you expecting wholesale changes from that Toulouse side, or do we have the players to make wholesale changes? Because we was a bit patched up at Toulouse, wasn't we?
Yeah, I don't think there will be, to be fair. If it was up to me, and it's not, I would have Zak Fishwick as the 18th man on Sunday. I think it would be a great opportunity to get him involved within the first team setup, get him on the field before the game, let him feel the crowd, let him feel the atmosphere, let him have that match day Super League experience of feeling the crowd, feeling everything. And then he doesn't then have to then play the game, because that'll allow him to understand and know how to deal with that sort of level of emotion, because it could be overwhelming. I'm not saying it would be. I don't know the lad, but I just feel like it would be very good to sort of blood him and give him a little bit of experience of what something's like. And then if you are going to throw him in, you know, maybe look at Wakefield the week after, once he's had that opportunity to be sort of a part of that setup. I'd be hopeful that Lachlan Coote is fit and available. I didn't believe he was 100% out of the game last week against Toulouse. I was of the belief he was more 50-50, and he just wasn't risked. Now, if that is the case, then fingers crossed he is ready and available to go on Sunday.
Yeah, and if anybody listens to Paul Cook on BBC Radio on Masadi, he basically gave two reasons why Lachlan Coote was doing media duties. It was that he's knackered, and the club have basically said, look, you might as well go do it because we've got our own the players who are going to be playing need to be at home kind of thing, or he's playing and he's the poster boy for the game, and that's why 𝐓𝐵𝐿𝐶𝐿's gone up. So, but there's no doubt, as we saw in the Easter derby, you know, if you get 𝐓𝐵𝐿𝐶𝐿 firing on all cylinders, he can win the game, can't he, Mike?
Yeah, I'm glad that you came back to me just then, because I've got something to cheer up about that. Oh yes. So obviously 𝐓𝐵𝐿𝐶𝐿 didn't travel across to France, and on Monday the lads were in training on Monday. They sort of
went for a meal, didn't they?
They all went for a meal out. So these lads have just travelled across to France. So I'm not saying he did, but 𝐓𝐵𝐿𝐶𝐿 could have put his hand up and said, "Look, send me. These lot have just been across to France and played a game. I've not played. I'll go do the media duties." And that could have been what happened. Obviously, he's a really nice guy, and he's somebody who has really sort of brought a lot of unity into the team, and I feel like that's the sort of thing that he would probably do. I think he understands as well that with his sort of stature and salary comes a level of responsibility to a team, and not only the team and the playing group, but the fans, his sponsor, Andrea Bruce. I know he does a lot for her as well, and it's great to be able to see a player connecting with the fans, with the sponsor, and also the club, and embracing that element of connectivity that we've got.
Yeah, no doubt. And Graham, if he does play, you know, obviously it's a massive call, because we've seen how important he is when he is playing well. How would you line us up on Sunday? Are you expecting big changes?
No, I don't think it's the time to do that. I think there's a stability there within the squad. If you look at the history of this season and what the team sheets have looked like, injuries aside, I think we've been pretty consistent with a lot of the squad, and we've just made the necessary adjustments, certainly with the forwards, etc. So I don't think there'll be wholesale changes. I think he'll go with what we know. I'd love to say that I'm confident 𝐓𝐿𝐶𝐿 will be there, and I want him to be there, obviously, because I think in that run of games where we had with 6, 7, 8 on the bounce, I think he was absolutely instrumental in a lot of the points we scored, not just with the boot, but if you look back at where the tries were scored from, he was either directly involved in the assist, if you like, or he was causing the decoy that created the assist for somebody else, because he's that good. He occupies people's minds when he hasn't got the ball. So I'd love to see him start. I think, Ryan Hall, do we know if he's going to play or not? We should have.
It's derby week, who knows?
Well, yeah. There's always something to surprise. Always a surprise on the team sheet, no matter what. So I think we should have a lot of stability there. The changes. If you put a lot of changes in at one go, you've got 4 or 5 days maximum to get everything right during the week. That's not normally how things operate at this level. They like to run the lines during the week with the players that are going to be there. So I'd like to think that there was the vast majority of the squad there that was out there on Saturday night over in Toulouse playing. As I said, the ones that have picked up knocks or were dubious. I'd love to see Coop back. I'd love to see Hall back, as long as he's fit and available to do what he does well for us, because I think he gives us that solidity, and he gives us that opportunity and that option coming out of backfield play, and he's obviously a threat going forward. So yeah, I'm looking for a lot of the same, barring maybe 1 or 2 tweaks.
Yeah, and let's be right. We know how derbies go, and this could be the time when someone like a Corbin Sims or Albert Vete, steps up and has the performance of a lifetime. And if you do that in a derby, that rights a lot of wrongs, doesn't it, for people? So I think it's time, maybe instead of wholesale changes and making a raft of change, etc., that our players are trusted. What's gone with Tony Smith is done now. They'll have had 5 days training under a new setup, new regime. They've got a derby at the end of the week. It's almost like it's a fresh start for him, isn't it? So it's going to be really interesting to see.
I think so as well. You look, players want to play, and especially when they've had a poor result like we had on Saturday, I think there'll be an element of pride in there that they want to put things right. They don't believe that was the true Hull Kingston Rovers performance, and I think there'll be a lot of them wanting to impress on the weekend, to make sure that we don't get a negative opinion of their attitudes or the levels of performance. I think they'll want to turn that around themselves, and they'll be busting a gut to play in that. Yeah,
and Craig, never mind the fact it's a derby, we're talking about a playoff push. we take 2 points off Hull. That brings them, right into the mire, and we still got to play them again. We've got we've got fixtures against Toulouse still, Wakefield, Warrington. If we can start off on Sunday with a victory and bring as many clubs into that playoff push, and as long as we're there or thereabouts come the end of the season with a couple of games to go. But obviously it all starts on Sunday.
Yeah, I actually think it's a massive game on Sunday, not just because it's a derby, but I actually think for our season going forward, because if we lose, yes, we've got Wakefield after, but Wakefield are playing well. But at some point, I do feel they'll turn a corner. I feel like Cass, with Radford's teams, they're up and down all the time. They're going through a good spell at the moment. I think they'll drop off at some point. But yeah, it's massive. Well, there should be there will be added pressure because they do need the 2 points. And I think Graham just said about the performance overall. It does need to be better. We don't want to be walking away from that stadium being negative, because you don't want to start thinking, where's our next win coming from? Oh, it should be Wakefield, and you get your hopes up, and then it's another bad performance. We need to start with the good performances on Sunday. And can I just say something about the team? I know, Mike, you said about Fishwick being 18th man. I 100% agree with you. But he's the one player, probably, I think, will come in. And he'll come in for someone. I think you mentioned last week, Jono, about one of the players who you don't really know what he brings. I don't want to slag players off, but for me, it come in for Richards. This Fishwick, I don't feel like he's got anything to lose. He's only got stuff to gain. He'll learn a lot from the game. And I think throwing youngsters into a game like this, it can go either way. But I just feel like he might get a lot more from this if he was thrown in at the deep end and got his chance.
Yeah, and that's it. Fresh eyes on it. Fresh eyes gives a different outlook and a different opinion, doesn't it? You won't be the first person to say about Richards and whether should be in the squad. One player I'd like to have seen against Toulouse was Will Tate. Especially on the back of signing a 2-year contract. I thought it'd been a perfect opportunity when you consider, yes, he's been out on loan this season, but he's still not playing regular rugby league. Enough, I don't think, anyway, where he's at the stage of the career where he does need to be playing. But, obviously these calls are made. And maybe this is why Danny McGuire has been pushing maybe for some of the younger players to be playing, because he sees it in training. He's closer to it than what we are. So, like we said, it's going to be very interesting how we line up on Sunday. But hopefully, whatever we do, it leads to 2 points. Mike, do you want to give us a quick update on Hull KR shirts? Because I can see you've got one of the military shirts there, and it's also got the military badges on the arms. So I'm guessing it's one of the players.
Sure is, yeah. So the club have got these up on the website. So for those of you watching on YouTube, if you're on podcast, obviously you won't be able to see it. But yeah, the club have got these up on the retail site. If you go to the limited edition / signed page, they've got all of the shirts from the Huddersfield warm-up available to purchase on there. Varying different prices dependent on player. And some of the profits from these go towards the Army Benevolent Fund. So it's really good supporting a cause here. I've got 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗁𝗍𝗔𝗍. I wanted one that had 2 different flags on the sleeve there. Obviously, we've got the New Zealand flag and the Tongan flag there as well. And the players have signed the ones that they wore. So, there is still quite a few of those available on there as well. And if anybody is maybe struggling at this time, you can actually head over to Rovers' Facebook page where they're running a competition. Not the Facebook, sorry, the Twitter. They're running a competition to win Frankie Halton's warm-up shirt. So that's giving somebody the opportunity that wouldn't maybe be able to get one to enter a competition to try and win one.
Yeah, fantastic. And when's the next episode on Hull KR shirts going to be?
It'll be next Friday. I launched last week. I did an episode on a man that was mentioned earlier, actually, Joel Tompkins. I did that last week. And then we've got one launching next week. I've got it filmed, but I've not edited it yet. So can't tell you what it is because I can't quite remember. But yeah, it's I think it might be the 89-91 home shirt, actually, the fair shirt that we wore at the new Craven Park. So if it's not that one, then that's the one after. It's one of the two.
Yeah, excellent. No, it's always worth a good look. Do you want to just give people your social medias, your website, Mike, so anyone who's listening or watching and who hasn't caught any of your work yet, where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So it's literally Hull Car Shirts across everything. So that's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The webpage is hullcarshirts.co.uk. And then over across on YouTube as well. We've got past 100 subscribers now, so we're able to rename that channel. So if you just search for Hull Car Shirts, it'll bring it up on there. Done 62 episodes plus 4 or 5 special editions. So there's hours and hours and hours of shirt-related content over there. So it's to most people it might be boring, but if you want to know some of the little intricacies and stories behind the shirts that maybe you aren't aware of, there's various different things for people to be able to check out over there. So thank you for the opportunity for sharing that information, Chris.
I've got a question for you, Mike.
Go on.
What we're wearing on Sunday?
Home shirt.
Is it home shirt? Are we the home team? I don't know. Or is it a toss of a coin? What is it?
No. We're listed as the home team. I don't have this for gospel reasons, but I believe it's normally down to marketing. The club really like to wear home shirts when it comes to derby games. If you think of whether it's at home or away, we would generally wear a home shirt where there isn't a clash. Obviously, with Hull FC being a predominantly black shirt this year, and obviously with us being red, we're able to wear that one. But hopefully, the Boilermakers third shirt should hopefully be worn in the very near future.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that actually, because it's not been seen that much, has it?
No, but when it does get seen, I've got a little story to tell about it. So I'm going to wait for that to happen, just in case it doesn't happen.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and of course on Sunday we received the sad news, didn't we, that Zuk Camera had sadly passed away at the tender age of 58. Of course, he represented Rovers during some of our most successful years, and also played for the Robins during a sad decline in the club's fortunes. But Zuk was an ever-present player. Actually made his debut in 1983, and it's remarkable that in his first 2 seasons he turned out for the Robins in 4 cup finals, making incredible 42 consecutive games before being rested in the 85-86 season. When he was 23, he after just 2 seasons, he played 86 times. And of course, he received 3 cup winners' medals. He went on to play for the Robins 233 times, scoring 18 tries. And his probably biggest compliment is that if he was around today, he'd probably be a star forward because he was strong and mobile. He had solid defence, and it was only in the latter stage of his career that he went into the second row. He was a fine ambassador for Hull Kingston Rovers, and I've spoke to Wayne Parker recently about it. And obviously, a lot of the former players, as our supporters, very sad to hear this news that Zuk had sadly gone. Graham, you'll have been having the pleasure of being able to watch him play. What were your memories of Zuk?
Yeah, probably echo a lot of what you said there, Chris, already around no-nonsense forward, number 10. So, again, I think it's worth pointing out that when Zuk and a lot of the others were playing, they were semi-professionals at that stage. So it wasn't the era where we are now of a professional game. It was that they were doing the rugby, the training, and holding down full-time jobs. And I'm sure many know that Zuk went on to have a full service in the fire service before he retired sort of 5 or 6 years ago as well. So that was sort of testament to the players of that age as well. But yeah, to echo what you've said already, managed to sort of speak to him a couple of times back in the days. Going back to that sort of intro I did as a young kid, we used to sit on the barriers, and in the days when you could run on the pitch afterwards, it was allowed, and you used to run up to the players, and everybody went for Zook Ema to ask for his tie-ups that they used to have and collect those. So I was one of those kids who was tugging on his shirt saying, "Look, Zook, can I have your tie-ups, please?" And then just a little anecdote on the back of it. It was about 2 or 3 years ago. Local cycling club that I'm with, he turned up on this bike, joined us for the first time in as a cyclist, and sort of looked at him and thought, "Blimey, that's Zook Ema, that is," and recognised him straight away. And once I'd stopped fanboying over him and that, went up to him and talked to him again and said, you know, all what I've said there about watching him as a kid. And he was very appreciative of the support that everybody had given him. He was thankful of his career, etc. Lovely person to talk to. And we'd gone for a ride over the bridge. As I say, it was his first time he'd come out with us. He turned up on this bike that was probably from the 1980s as well, as an old-fashioned racer bike. The gearing on it was not probably what modern standard bikes are up to, and it looked heavy and image sort of hard work of it, but he stuck at it. And we went over the bridge, Humber Bridge that is, and over towards Saxby and Bombay for any sort of viewers and listeners that sort of know cycling and go over that way. You'll know the little hills that are around there as well. And we all sort of turned left off the main road and went up one of them, and I sort of hung back to make sure everybody had made the junction and made the left turn, and then followed them up. And I could just see sort of halfway up the distance this big unit sat on this bike, and the crank slowly grinding away on this. And I thought, I'm going to end up like flipping Harrison Ford on Raiders of the Lost Ark when that cannonball just keeps rolling back down the hill at me. That's going to be Zook in a minute if he doesn't keep pedaling. So I got to him and just sort of give him a bit of a nudge along and that, and he got to the top and was absolutely blowing out of his backside when he got there. But he did it, and he said that was one of the hardest things I've ever done, even though he's played however many games of rugby league in his life. That sort of bike ride was the hardest thing he'd ever done. So yeah, I spent a little bit of time, chewing his ear off about rugby back in the day, and he was a gentleman, but like you said a few minutes ago, to talk to. Talked very passionately about his family and the kids and grandkids that he'd got, and how he really enjoyed the retirement that he was having, and how he enjoyed watching them getting kick-started in their rugby career as young players, and enjoyed supporting them and doing the granddad thing of school runs and what have you. So yeah, 58 is absolutely no age whatsoever to be taken from us, especially when he was he'd worked and given his service to the club, obviously, to the fire service, and then to enjoy his retirement, what he thought was going to be a long and fruitful one, to have it cut short is very, very sad indeed. And like I say, it's such a nice person with it as well. Yeah,
I suppose that's the biggest tribute, wasn't it? He's highly regarded for what he achieved, but actually it's him as a person what people remember. And amazingly, when you look at what he's achieved in his career, he retired at 28. It's crazy, really. And I spoke to Gary Clark a couple of weeks ago. He also retired at the age of 28. And you look at what these players in that era, playing 38, 40 games a season, cup finals, the toll it'll take on their body, etc., etc. So these are people who should be highly regarded. And of course, another former Rovers player who sadly passed away was Mick Crane, obviously more fondly remembered for his exploits across the river with the black and whites. But of course, sad to see a character like him pass away, because of course he'll be fondly remembered for what he achieved in the game. And I'm not sure, but I think there was some call for maybe a minute's silence at the derby on Sunday. I don't know if whether that's happening or not, but I think it'd be a fitting tribute from both sides, and especially for spectators to be able to pay their respects, because there'll be lots of people wanting to do that. And of course, Rovers play Hull FC on Sunday in Newcastle at Magic Weekend. It's a 5:30 p.m. kickoff. Of course, after all the turmoil and all the twists and turns of the last few days, it'd be good just to go see a rugby league game and see what happens on Sunday. So thank you, Mike, Graham, Craig. Of course, this is the Red Robin Podcast Weekly, which is powered by 360 Chartered Accountants and Budget Ties Auto Centre. Remember, live, love, laugh and be happy.